action across the floor of this arena called the Hall Renews.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ann Simon, and we're here in Strasbourg for the Rhythmic Gymnastics World Championships. It's a well-known sport in Europe. The Russians and Bulgarians have been competitive for years, but this is something special. This is the last major gathering before the Olympic Games in Los Angeles, and although it was reintroduced to the Olympics in 1980, this is the first time that the United States will ever compete. So with that in mind, let me introduce my colleague and expert in the sport, Gordon Maddox.
Well, Ann, I think it's only fair to say that of all the countries competing in this World Championships, the United States probably has less international competition than any other country. So we don't fare very well in the World Championships, although we're climbing and doing better and better each year, and hopefully going to do very well in the Olympic Games. But I think this is a time to make a couple of distinctions. The sport of gymnastics that I think we're most accustomed to is called artistic gymnastics. This is where the gymnast works on the apparatus, such as the balance beam, the uneven bars, or even the horizontal bar for men. In rhythmic gymnastics, the gymnast uses only hand apparatus. And in the case of this World Championship, the hand apparatus will include the ribbon, the hoop, the ball, and of all things, the clubs.
The top 8 gymnasts from the all-around qualify for the finals. Now, no member of the United States team made it to the finals. Both the hoop and ball competitions have already been decided, so let's take a look at the winners.
We're watching Anilia Ralenkova from Bulgaria, who with this performance scored a perfect 10 and the gold medal. Ralenkova established herself as having the most dramatic style of all the competitors. In the ball event, the gold medal was shared by 2 gymnasts. This is Galiana Beloglazova of the USSR. In this event, emphasis must be placed on the use of the entire body in manipulating the ball. Her score, a perfect 10. The other gold medalist with the ball was Ralenkova Ignatova from Bulgaria, and Ignatova's performance furthered the seeming dominance of the Bulgarian team with this perfect 10 routine.
We're getting ready for the finals of the club competition. Here are the standings so far and how they got there. The scores from the all-arounds will be added to the final score to determine the winner. Now, as you can see, the scores are dominated by 10s, which is unprecedented in World Championship competition. Here's how Bulgaria's Gueorgieva won the first perfect 10 ever given in these World Championships.
And as we can see from this preliminary performance, the judges in rhythmic gymnastics have painted themselves into the same corner as the artistic gymnastics officials. The technique and difficulty of these modern routines has literally gone beyond the scope of the rules. And therefore, if a performer receives a 9.9 early in the competition, every gymnast following her who may be slightly better has got to be given a 10. And that's what's happened here in Strasbourg.
Here she is again, Dilyana Gueorgieva. She's 18 years old from Bulgaria, carrying a perfect 10 as she begins her final performance.
And I think all of these gymnasts probably have their favorite event, but the club event is really my preference. I think that it does lots of things for the development of an athlete. For one thing, it encourages bilateral development. And by that I mean that if you're right-handed, then you've got to become, with these clubs, equally good with both the right and the left hand. And watch how they use both hands with different or equal intensity.
You'll notice that she's on a carpet while on the left there's a wooden floor. Now, there's a reason for that, because some teams train exclusively on one or the other, so it's a requirement in the World Championships that they have a choice of one of the two.
You know, interestingly enough, the Bulgarians have always been so dramatic, but I don't know if I have my decades mixed up, but that sounds like bebop music to me. The Bulgarians really have become, I think, the style that is to be emulated by all other countries. Boy, are they dominant.
Bulgaria's Dilyana Gueorgieva, 18 years old, taking her bows to a capacity crowd here in Strasbourg, France. Let's take another look at that performance. Gordon?
And let's look particularly at the bilateral aspect. As you recall, that means the use of both hands equally. And I can hardly believe the way they manipulate these clubs with both hands. Well, they almost look like jugglers.
Dilyana Gueorgieva receives her score, a perfect 10. Unbelievable. It gives her a total of 20, and that guarantees her at least a share of a gold medal. France for the Rhythmic Gymnastic World Championships. Next up, 18-year-old Lily Ignatova of Bulgaria. As we told you earlier, the Bulgarians seem to have ruled the roost for years. She, too, has to have a perfect 10 coming into this. She needs a 10 to keep pace with her fellow Bulgarian Gueorgieva. Gordon, it's interesting to see the difference in their body structure compared to the body structure of an artistic gymnast who is much more muscular.
Oh, yeah, and you know, after Olga Korbut in 1972, gymnastics per se became an enormously popular sport all over the world. But I'll tell you, not every woman attracted to gymnastics had either the strength or the courage for the uneven bars or the balance beam. So rhythmic gymnastics is filling a much-needed void. And since this sport doesn't demand those death-defying skills, we're finding more mature athletes enjoying their sport into a more advanced age. Nice change in tempo. That, by the way, is one of the requirements. They must have a change in tempo somewhere in the exercise. And the European crowd always picks up this kind of music.
Many of these individuals bring their own piano player.
You know, this old barn of an arena looks like it ought to be used for a stop show or something, but bring in these lovely ladies and the nice music and an enthusiastic crowd, you really have a whale of an event.
Bulgaria's Lily Ignatova, hoping for a perfect 10, of course, to keep pace. She smiles to the crowd. Let's take another look at that performance. It was really quite beautiful.
Ignatova's routine is more reminiscent of the typical Bulgarian approach. Serious demeanor, classical music, with just a whole lot of things happening at the same time. Now think about it. She's an actress, a dancer, an athlete, and a juggler. All this simultaneously.
Well, we've got another perfect 10 here. That gives Lily Ignatova a total of 20 and ties her for first place. Next up, Analia Ralenkova, another Bulgarian. She's 19 years old, and she, too, needs a perfect 10.
Well, don't be surprised if she gets it. She is really a dynamic performer. Incidentally, one of the factors that separates this rhythmic gymnastics from artistic gymnastics is the fact that the rules prohibit these women from doing any gymnastics or acrobatic type movements.
In fact, they lose points for that, don't they?
Absolutely.
First World Championships were held in 1963 in Budapest. Since then, it's become a biannual event.
I think it's going to be a very popular event in Los Angeles in the Olympic Games, too.
Oh, absolutely.
So far, she's right on schedule for her 10. There's her change of tempo, change of musical style. Very difficult. You know, I can't swear to it, but I think she dropped the club there.
We'll keep an eye on the judges for that one.
Oh, what a shame after this performance, if that was the fact. Well, Ralenkova really did, Ann, have a nice performance, and we don't know for sure whether or not she dropped it, and it's going to be interesting now to see what the judges award her. Let's go back and take a look at it in slow motion. Now, it was a very difficult toss. Behind the back toss, does a forward roll, catches it, and I believe she does bobble it right there on the floor, and it's a heck of a recovery.
Well, Gordon, despite what we just saw there, she has received a perfect 10, too. And there are the judges conferring. The Soviets are registering a complaint, I think.
I think you're right, but in all respect for the judges, I'm not sure that they could all see the mistake that we saw.
Now, here's the Soviet Union's Delia Kutkaite, and she cannot be too happy right now because she comes into this competition with a 9.9, and as it stands right now, she's closed out of any medal.
Well, if the Soviet appeal is successful, you know, it will be turned over to a jury, and if they do indeed change the score of the last performance, she still has the potential of getting a bronze medal. Right now, the jury is still out. I love her style. She has a very elegant style, good movement. Isn't it incredible, Ann? A gymnast coming into a finals of the World Championship with a 9.9 with a probable aspect of no success.
I'm sure that must be difficult to take.
Yeah, she's going for it either way. And you know, as long as the championships have been going, and as popular as it has become around the world, still, the Bulgarians and the Soviets are the two dominant teams, and everyone else is still playing catch-up.
Yeah, that's right. She's used the entire span of that floor right there, so she's doing well so far.
Oh, it's a fine performance. Excellent performance.
Delia Kutkaite.
Well, talk about doing a lot of things all at the same time. Watch her final throw. Oh, that's nice.
This is unbelievable. Another perfect 10. That makes 4 in a day of perfect 10s. And we'll be right back. Just watched a replay of their videotapes. A protest has indeed been allowed, lowering Ralenkova's score to 19.9. So here's a look at the final standings. Gueorgieva and Ignatova both winning gold medals, while Ralenkova and Kutkaite come up with bronze. As for the Americans here at the World Championships, Michelle Berube, a 17-year-old from Detroit, Michigan, finished the highest of any American. She placed 34th in the all-around. We'll be back with the ribbon competition, time permitting, but right now let's go to Atlantic City, and Chris Schenkel. The closing landmark in Strasbourg has been this magnificent cathedral. It's considered to be one of the few great masterpieces left over from medieval Europe. Ravaged by a series of fires over the years, this great cathedral was and still is a focal point for Christianity since it was first commissioned by the Bishop of Strasbourg back in the 4th century. I'm Ann Simon, back with Gordon Maddox with the ribbon competition in the Rhythmic Gymnastic World Championships here in Strasbourg. Here are the standings so far. As you can see, Bulgaria's Ignatova has already competed, and it wasn't quite as good as she had hoped.
Well, Ann, she received a 9.8, but the way the 10s are flowing, a 9.8 probably isn't good enough for a medal. Someone else is going to have to make a serious mistake for her to have a chance for a medal at all.
This is Diliana Gueorgieva of Bulgaria. She's 18 years old, and Diliana comes into this competition with a 9.9.
This event has its own kind of peculiar difficulty. As in all the other events, the gymnast must show some release moves where they toss the ribbon, and this in itself is different in an extraordinary way. There are air currents in these large buildings, and they have to literally learn the way the air currents go and adapt their routine in order to compensate for it. You'll see this as it goes along.
Not only that, Gordon, but they have to create a pattern or a visual picture, and at no time should that ribbon be staying on the floor, sitting on the floor. It's got to be very graceful.
This seems to lend itself more to a dance style, too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, yes. You know, Gordon, if you were to put any of these ladies on the stage with the Joffrey Ballet, I would think that they would fit right in.
Oh, yeah, really.
We've just seen a beautiful performance by Bulgaria's Gueorgieva. Let's take another look at that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, acrobatic or tumbling movements are not allowed in this sport. About the only thing you can do is what we'll see in this dismount is it'll be a modified cartwheel into a modified forward roll, not quite tumbling.
And Gueorgieva receives a perfect 10, putting her in first place, in fact, guaranteeing her a share of a gold medal. Next up is Ralenkova. She comes into this competition with a 9.75. She needs a 9.9 to move ahead of Ignatova for second place.
And talk about dramatic performances. I suspect we'll see a real biggie here. As I said earlier, Ann, every time they toss the ribbon, they're really rolling the dice.
Just a spellbinding performance to watch that ribbon move so gracefully.
Yeah, keep an eye on the face. They're required to use the entire body, but the Bulgarians in particular really use facial mobility. Lots of expression.
Certainly one of the reasons why they are considered to be the best in the world.
They've got the Soviets really concerned about the '84 Olympic Games in Los Angeles because for the last 2 World Championships, including this one, they're so dominant that the Soviets, I'm sure, don't know quite where to go.
19-year-old Ralenkova of Bulgaria. Let's take another look at that absolutely beautiful performance, Gordon.
Well, we'll watch again in slow motion, and while she's constantly keeping the ribbon in action, you're going to see flexibility, mobility, facial expression. You're going to see strength. Ralenkova really has it all.
And she gets that perfect 10 she needed. That puts her in second place with a total of 19.75. Next up, Galina Beloglazova, 16 years old, tells us she's a music student in the Soviet Union. Remember, the scores from the all-around will be added to the final score to determine the winner. Beloglazova comes in with a 9.9. She needs a 10.
Well, Ann, I don't know. You suppose there are going to be any 10s given out in this competition?
I think so.
She is such a beautiful performer. Let's just let it play a bit. It's interesting, in both artistic gymnastics and in rhythmic gymnastics, sometimes the simplest moves bring on the greatest applause from the audience, as in the little spin on the back we just observed. Now when she tosses, watch how it curves in the air. Those are the air currents I spoke of earlier. Oh, that's nice, Ann.
Galina Beloglazova needs a 10. Waves to the crowd. Let's look at that.
Well, here we go with Beloglazova again in slow motion. That little spin on the back. I'm sure she would not consider that nearly the most difficult exercise in her routine, but the crowd thought it was and responded appropriately.
And she gets a 10.0, a perfect 10, and ties for the gold medal.
and a most enthusiastic crowd here in Strasbourg has been on hand for the strongest world championship in the history of this young sport.
Here are the final standings in the ribbon competition. This is Ann Simon along with Gordon Maddox saying au revoir from Strasbourg, France.